What was the Leveson inquiry?
Okay, the Leveson inquiry was a government-commissioned inquiry into a series of breaches of behaviour by newspaper editors and journalists. It first came to light most notoriously in relation to the Millie Dowler case. Newspaper journalists were using illegal phone hacking software in order to hack into people's phones, and this led to a huge public outcry. People were horrified that this kind of intrusion into people's privacy, particularly at a moment of personal grief and tragedy, was something that the public were rightly furious about, and grave concerns were raised. The government took this so seriously that they launched an inquiry, and a High Court Judge, Lord Leveson, was appointed to interview the people who were involved. The purpose of the inquiry was to look at the practice, the ethics and the moral conduct of newspapers in the UK, and the findings were grim.
In the weeks that 13-year-old Millie Dowler was missing and her loved ones were desperately waiting for news, a private detective working for the News of the World hacked into her mobile phone and listened to her voicemail.
And it is just absolutely awful that they were given false hope by this kind of criminal activity that seems to have been going on.
But it doesn't alter the fact that the police said...
Who wouldn't feel dreadful, the way in which that must have added to the distress and the shock of that family.
And that's why we need, after the police inquiries are complete, a proper inquiry into the culture and practices which allowed these things to happen.
I also have to say that I failed.
The findings of the inquiry were quite profound for the newspaper industry. One journalist who worked for News International, specifically for the News of the World, was actually imprisoned for the way that people's privacy had been invaded. The News of the World was heavily censored and in fact was forced to close down. Now, the News of the World at the time was the best-selling Sunday newspaper, selling over 3 million copies. So for its publisher, News International, that was a major blow. That was a seismic shift. Leveson also queried, as well as querying and damning the moral behaviour, the conduct of the newspaper industry. He also questioned the way in which newspapers were, as an industry, were regulated. Now, the regulators previously had been a form of self-regulation, the Press Complaints Commission, also known as the PCC. Now, the PCC was replaced by IPSO, the Independent Press Standards Organisation. IPSO was still funded by the newspaper industry, and it was still staffed by serving journalists or former editors. Now, a pressure group called Hacked Off, who were very outspoken on the single issue of press regulation, they described IPSO as the PCC with fresh lipstick, implying that effectively the name had changed, but their role within the industry as a regulator was no more effective. And we're now moving towards a period of press regulation that's known as Leveson 2, where we're looking to see what the next step is in establishing a firm and effective form of regulation.